There is something different about this particular hour. Not yesterday. Not the week that came before it. Not the season you have been surviving for longer than you can properly count. This hour. This specific moment in which your eyes are reading these words, or your ears are receiving this sound, or your heart is quietly leaning in towards something it cannot yet name, but already recognizes. Something has shifted in the atmosphere around your life, and you may not have felt it yet in your hands or your plans or your circumstances, but it is there. It is real. And the reason you found this message today, the reason it appeared where it appeared, at the hour it appeared, is not coincidence. It is not algorithm. It is appointment. This is the moment when the seed that has been underground for longer than you thought you could bear begins its final push toward the surface. You could not see it happening. You had no instrument capable of measuring it. You looked at the ground of your life, the same ground you had been staring at for months or years, and you saw nothing. Bare earth, stillness, maybe even hardness. And you began to tell yourself the story that nothing was ever going to come, that the ground had been wrong all along, that the seed had not taken root the way you hoped, or that the seed had never been planted at all, or worse, that the seed had been planted, but that it was not the kind of seed that was ever going to grow into something worth the waiting. You told yourself that story carefully and quietly, and you almost believed it completely. But here is what is true about this moment right now. In this hour you are standing in, the seed did not die. The seed is not dormant. The seed has been doing the most important work of its entire existence underground, in the dark, in the silence, in the season you labeled as failure. And what is about to break through the surface of your life is not the small thing you originally buried in hope. What is about to break through is something that grew in ways that only the darkness could have produced. Something with roots so deep that no storm will be able to uproot it once it stands in the open air. Only a few people will hear this message today, not because it was hidden, not because it was withheld, but because only a specific kind of person is ready to receive what is being said in this hour. Only someone who has been underground long enough. Only someone who has been in the season of invisible growth long enough to have developed the root system that can hold what is coming. If you are still here, if something inside you leaned in instead of scrolling past, that leaning is itself the evidence that this word was made for you. Do not skip this. Do not walk away. Because what is being declared over your life in this moment is the word that changes the story you have been telling yourself about who you are and where you are going. God said, pack up. And that is the most terrifying and most glorious thing that has ever been said over your life, because it means what has been keeping you in one place, the familiarity, the fear, the false comfort of staying in what you know, is about to be lifted. Not gently, not gradually, but decisively. Because the location your life has been in was never the location your life was designed for. The people surrounding you in this last season were not all the people you were made to meet. The version of yourself you have been performing for the comfort of others is not the version that was written before you were born. There is a new location. There are new people. There are blessings that have your name on them that cannot reach the address where you have been living. And the God who designed your specific life is looking at you right now in this moment and saying one word with absolute authority and unmistakable love: pack up. This is not a message for everyone, but it is entirely and completely for you. There is something that has been sitting on your chest for longer than you want to admit. Not a sickness, not a crisis. Something quieter than that, and in some ways, more difficult to explain, because it does not have a clean name. It is the feeling of being in a season that has gone on past its expected end date. It is the feeling of watching other people seem to move forward while you stand in what looks like the same place, carrying the same prayers, staring at the same ceiling at 3 in the morning, wondering if something went wrong somewhere along the way, or if maybe you misheard what you thought God was saying to you, and no one around you fully understands it. That is the loneliest part. It's because from the outside your life might look functional. You go through the motions, you show up, you smile at the right moments. But on the inside, there is a grief that visits you without warning. A wave that comes when you are in the middle of something completely ordinary, washing dishes, sitting in traffic, scrolling through other people's announcements and celebrations, and suddenly there it is. A grief about what has not happened yet. A grief about the years that have moved past without the things you were trusting for. A grief that feels almost embarrassing to name because you are supposed to be a person of faith, and people of faith are supposed to be grateful, and you are grateful. But grief and gratitude can live in the same body, and it does not make you weak, it makes you honest. That is the first sign that you are in a chosen season. The waves of grief that arrive without warning and without permission. You could be laughing one moment, and then something shifts, and the weight is back. That is not spiritual failure. That is the evidence of someone who has been believing for something long enough to feel the fullness of the weight. The second sign is that the places and the people that once felt like belonging have begun to feel like weight. There is someone in your life, maybe more than one person, whose presence used to feel like rest and now feels like a subtle pressure. Not because they have changed, or not only because of that, but because you have changed, and the version of you that fit into that relationship no longer exists. You are not the same person you were 2 years ago. You are not the same person you were 6 months ago. And some of the spaces in your life were built to hold the old version of you, not this one. Not the one that is being prepared for what is next. And when you try to sit inside those spaces now, there is a discomfort that no amount of effort can explain away. That discomfort is not a character flaw. It is directional. It is telling you something is moving, and some things cannot come with you. The third sign is the dream. Not every chosen one has the same dream, but there is a category of dream that chosen ones share across time zones and backgrounds and languages. It is the dream of a door that has not yet opened. Sometimes it is a literal door in a hallway, and you are standing in front of it, knowing something incredible is on the other side, but you cannot find the handle or the door will not move, or you wake up just before you can see what is behind it. Sometimes it is a house you have never lived in, but somehow know is yours. Sometimes it is a city with streets you recognize from somewhere deeper than memory. These dreams are not random. They are previews. They are the language of a God who is showing you the destination while the road is still being built. The fourth sign is that you keep receiving the same message from completely unrelated sources. The preacher says something on Sunday that sounds like a direct answer to the question you asked alone on Wednesday night. Then you open a book to a random page, and the first sentence you read is a continuation of that same answer. Then someone you have not spoken to in months sends you a message out of nowhere with the exact words you needed to hear. This is not coincidence layered on coincidence. This is heaven being deliberate. When the same word keeps finding you in different places, it is because heaven knows how many times you have talked yourself out of believing it was really for you. So it keeps saying it in different voices, from different directions, until you finally stop arguing and simply receive it. Now here is what you need to hear, and please do not rush past this part. You are not being punished. The wait is not evidence of rejection. The silence is not evidence of abandonment. There is a difference, a very significant difference between being overlooked and being positioned. And if you have spent any part of this season believing that God forgot about you, or that you did something wrong that put you outside the reach of the promise, then what you are about to hear is the most important correction that could come to you today. When someone is overlooked, they are unseen. Their name is not on the list. The decision was made without them in the room. The opportunity passed because no one thought to call them. That is being overlooked. That is a human failure. That is what happens when the systems of this world operate without divine input. But you are not overlooked. You are positioned. Positioning looks like delay from the outside. Positioning feels like waiting from the inside. But positioning is an active, intentional, purposeful work. When God is positioning someone, He is not sitting back watching them suffer. He is arranging things that the human eye cannot see yet. He is removing what would have hindered the blessing before the blessing arrives. He is building something in the person that the next season will require. He is moving people off the path and onto the path. He is preparing a place while simultaneously preparing the person for the place. Positioning is not passive. It is one of the most active things heaven does. And the fact that it looks like nothing from your current vantage point is not evidence that nothing is happening. It is evidence that what is happening is too large for the natural eye to track in real time. You have been carrying a loneliness that nobody around you has properly named. The loneliness of someone who has been believing for something long enough that it started to feel like foolishness. The loneliness of someone who stopped talking about their dream because the last time they shared it, the room got quiet in a way that felt like doubt dressed up as concern. The loneliness of someone who has been watching the people around them build lives and celebrate milestones while you are still standing at what feels like the beginning of something that was supposed to have started already. You have been carrying the weight of feeling misunderstood, not because the people around you are cruel. Most of them love you in the way they know how to love. But they do not carry what you carry. They do not see what you see when you close your eyes and imagine what your life is supposed to look like. They do not feel the pull that you feel towards something that does not yet have a name or an address. And so when you try to explain the restlessness, when you try to put words around the thing that is happening inside you, it comes out sounding like dissatisfaction or ingratitude, when really it is something much closer to divine discontent. It is the feeling of a seed that knows it was meant to become a tree and has been sitting in the same soil for long enough that the soil itself has become a limitation. But here is the reframe, and receive this carefully. The waiting was not a punishment assigned to you. It was a protection arranged for you. The thing you were asking for 3 years ago, if it had arrived on the timeline you requested, would have met a version of you that was not yet ready to steward it. The relationship, if it had come when you first prayed for it, would have met a version of you that still carried wounds that would have poisoned it. The opportunity, if it had opened when you first knocked on the door, would have met a version of you that did not yet have the character to sustain what the opportunity required. God was not withholding the blessing. God was withholding the timing. And there is a mercy in that, even when the mercy feels like silence. You were not being held back, you were being held together. And the holding is almost over. There is a shift happening right now that your feelings have not fully caught up to yet. Something that was fixed is now beginning to move. Something that was closed is now beginning to open. And you are going to start seeing small signs of it, some of which you may have already noticed without knowing what to call them. An unexpected peace that arrives in a moment when panic would have been more logical. A sudden clarity about something that has confused you for months. A door that opens without you having to force it, without you having to perform for it, without you having to shrink yourself to fit through it. You are not at the end of your story. You are not even at a plateau. You are at the threshold of a new location, new people, new blessings, and a new life. And the fact that you showed up to hear this message today is itself a part of the unfolding. If any part of what you just heard named something you have been carrying alone, if any word in this section landed somewhere specific inside you, then do not carry it silently. Type the words "I see it" in the comments right now. Not because a number on a screen means anything, but because there is something powerful about a chosen one declaring out loud that they can see what heaven has been doing in their life, even when the evidence was invisible to everyone else. Type "I see it," and as you do, know that you are joining a room full of people across the world who are waking up to the exact same truth at the exact same time. And if this message has meant something to you today, if it found you in a place where you needed to be found, consider sharing it with someone who is still sitting in the silence of their waiting season, someone who has not yet had anyone name what they are going through. You do not need to explain it to them. Just send it. Let the message do what it was made to do. Like this video so that it reaches the next chosen one who is searching without knowing what to search for. Subscribe so that you do not miss what is coming, because what is being built in this space is not accidental either. And if this community has given you something of value, and you feel led to support what is being built here, there is a way to do that through the link below. And every contribution goes directly into making sure this message reaches further than it did yesterday. You are seen, you are not forgotten, and the wave of grief that arrives without warning is not evidence that the promise is broken. It is evidence that you are human enough to feel the weight of waiting, and chosen enough to still be standing here, still believing, still showing up. That combination is rarer than you know, and heaven has not missed it. There is a moment that comes in every chosen one's journey where the believing is no longer enough by itself, where the faith that carried you through the darkest part of the waiting season begins to ask for a partner. Not a replacement, not a substitute, a partner. And that partner is practice, not the performance of spirituality, not the outward appearance of someone who has it all together, but a genuine, daily, grounded practice that gives your belief somewhere to land, something to hold onto, something to do with your hands on the days when the feelings refuse to cooperate. Because here is something that chosen ones sometimes forget in the middle of the waiting. Faith was never designed to be purely internal. It was designed to move through the body, through the breath, through the voice, through the posture, through the small and consistent choices made in ordinary moments when no one is watching and nothing extraordinary appears to be happening. The great figures in every sacred tradition understood this. They were not people who simply believed harder than everyone else. They were people who built their believing into the architecture of their daily lives. They showed up in the small moments, and the small moments accumulated into something that the world eventually called a miracle. You have been carrying your faith like a weight you are trying not to drop, and today the invitation is to put it down, not to abandon it, but to set it down gently and let it become the ground beneath your feet rather than the burden in your arms. That shift from carrying to standing is the difference between exhausted faith and settled faith. And what you are about to receive is a simple, three-part practice designed specifically for chosen ones in a season of transition. A season where God has said, pack up, where the old location is releasing its grip, and the new location is not yet fully visible, where you need something concrete to do in the in-between. This practice does not require a special room. It does not require a certain time of day, although morning tends to hold a particular quality of openness that makes it especially powerful. It does not require any previous spiritual training or experience. It does not require you to feel ready, because the practice is not built on feelings. It is built on alignment. And you can step into alignment even when your emotions are telling you a completely different story. The name of this practice is the Threshold Protocol, and the word threshold is intentional, because that is exactly where you are. You are standing at the threshold of a new location, a new identity, a new chapter, and thresholds require a specific kind of attention. You do not walk through a threshold the same way you walk through an ordinary doorway. A threshold marks a before and an after. It marks the end of one world and the beginning of another. And chosen ones who do not mark their thresholds consciously tend to carry the weight of the old world into the new one, which means the new location arrives, but the internal landscape has not fully made the move yet. This practice is how you make sure that when your new life opens, you walk into it whole. Step 1 of the threshold protocol is this. Sit still, close your eyes if it is safe to do so, and bring to mind one thing that you are grateful did not happen. Not something you lost. Not something you are waiting for. Something specific that you once wanted. Desperately, that you prayed for, or worked toward, or believed for with everything you had, and that did not come to pass. It might be a relationship that did not become what you hoped. It might be a job you did not get. It might be a city you did not move to. A version of your future that seemed certain and then dissolved. Whatever it is, bring it forward in your mind. Let yourself remember how much you wanted it. And then, from where you are standing now, with everything you know about who you have become since that moment, say these words either out loud or in the quiet of your own heart. Thank you for the closed door. Thank you that what I wanted then was not what I needed. Thank you that the protection I did not recognize felt like rejection, but was actually redirection. This is not an exercise in toxic positivity. This is not about pretending the loss did not hurt. It did hurt. It may still carry an ache. But the practice of gratitude for what did not happen is one of the most powerful realignment tools available to a chosen one in transition, because it recalibrates the soul's relationship with divine timing. It teaches the deeper part of you that the God who closed that door was the same God who knew what was on the other side of it, and that the closing was an act of love, not an act of indifference. And when that truth settles into your body rather than just your mind, something shifts. A tension releases. A fear loosens its grip, and you become slightly more capable of trusting the next closed door and the next open one, without demanding that either of them make immediate sense. Spend at least 2 minutes in this first step. Do not rush past it. Let the gratitude become specific. Let it become embodied. Let it move from something you are saying to something you are feeling. Even if the feeling is complex, even if it is mixed with sadness, the complexity is not a problem. Complexity is the evidence of a full human experience meeting a full divine. Step 2 of the threshold protocol is the declaration. And the declaration is built around the truth that your waiting season has not been empty time. It has been appointed time. It has been time that was counted, purposeful, measured, and meaningful. Not wasted, not stolen, not lost, appointed. And a declaration is different from an affirmation. An affirmation is something you say to convince yourself of something you are not yet sure is true. A declaration is something you say because you are announcing what heaven has already established, whether you can see it yet or not. The declaration for this season is simple, and you can speak it in your own words as long as the meaning remains. The meaning is this: I am not behind. I am not too late. I am not forgotten. I am positioned. What belongs to me cannot pass me. What was written for me cannot be rewritten by anyone or anything. The God who assigned this season is the same God who is completing it, and I declare that the next chapter has already begun, even if my eyes cannot yet confirm what my spirit already knows. Speak that declaration with your chest open and your spine straight. Chosen ones tend to shrink themselves in seasons of waiting, as if making themselves smaller will somehow make the waiting more acceptable, more polite, less presumptuous. But your posture in the waiting matters. It is a statement to the spiritual atmosphere around you. It is a declaration of expectation. An expectation, not arrogance. Expectation born from genuine trust is one of the most magnetic forces in the universe of faith. When you expect the goodness of God to arrive, you position yourself to recognize it when it does. When you have collapsed into resignation, goodness can knock on your door and you will tell it you are not home. So stand up straight when you make this declaration. Put your shoulders back. Let your body agree with your words. Let your physical posture become a form of worship, and then speak it. Slowly and clearly, as if you are signing a document that heaven has already prepared and is simply waiting for your signature. Step 3 of the threshold protocol is the 7 minutes. And this is where many chosen ones initially resist, not because they do not value stillness, but because they have been moving so fast for so long that the idea of 7 uninterrupted minutes of silence feels almost threatening. The mind has been trained by the pace of your season to keep moving, to keep solving, to keep analyzing, to keep wondering if anything is shifting, or if the breakthrough is real, or if you are just having a good day that will be followed by disappointment again. But here is what 7 minutes of intentional silence does that nothing else can replicate. It gives the deeper part of you a chance to receive what the surface part of you has been too busy to absorb. All of the things that heaven has been trying to communicate. All of the adjustments that God has been making in the invisible architecture of your life. All of the peace that was being extended to you while you were moving too quickly to reach out and take it. All of it becomes accessible in the silence. The silence is not emptiness. It is a field of reception, and chosen ones who learn to enter that field regularly, even briefly, begin to notice something remarkable. They begin to hear things they did not hear before. Not audible voices necessarily, though for some people that does happen, but a settled knowing, a clarity that arrives without effort, a direction that becomes obvious where confusion had been. 7 minutes, eyes closed, no music, no phone, no background noise if at all possible, no agenda except to be present, no performance, no forcing, no straining to feel something spiritual. Simply breathe, simply be still, and let the silence do the work that noise has been preventing. This 7-minute practice is not a substitute for prayer or worship or any other spiritual discipline you already carry. It is an addition, a portal, a daily threshold that prepares you to walk through every other threshold with your eyes open and your heart aligned. And what you are about to discover in the next part of this message is that this practice of intentional 7-minute silence is also connected to something that science has recently begun to understand about the brain and the specific frequency at which chosen ones naturally operate, a frequency that research is now confirming has measurable effects on clarity, creativity, memory, and the ability to recognize opportunity when it appears. That connection between what you just received as a spiritual practice and what neuroscience has been quietly discovering about the human brain is not a coincidence. It is another confirmation that the way heaven designed you is not in conflict with the way heaven designed the physical world. The spirit and the science have always been telling the same story, and you are about to hear the chapter that brings them together. But before we move there, take a breath right now. A real one. The kind that fills the lower part of your lungs. The kind that signals to your nervous system that you are safe, that you are not in danger, that something good is unfolding even if you cannot see the whole picture yet. Take that breath and hold it for just a moment. Let it be a small act of trust. Let it be the beginning of the threshold protocol for today, even if all you can do right now is breathe differently for 30 seconds. That is enough. That is more than enough. A chosen one who shows up imperfectly is still a chosen one who shows up, and showing up is where everything begins. There is a reason that chosen ones have always felt like they operate on a different frequency than the people around them. And for a long time, that feeling was only described in spiritual language. It was called anointing, it was called gifting, it was called favor. And those words are true, and they are real, and they carry weight that no laboratory can fully measure. But what is becoming increasingly clear through decades of serious scientific research is that the spiritual reality that chosen ones have always known about themselves has a neurological counterpart. The frequency is not just a metaphor. It is measurable. It is real. And understanding it changes everything about how you approach the 7 minutes of silence that were just described, and about why that practice is far more powerful than it might initially appear. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. Researchers call it gamma. And before the word gamma makes you think this is about to become a lecture in a subject you did not sign up for, stay with this. Because what you are about to hear is going to reframe your entire understanding of what has been happening in your brain during the waiting season. And more importantly, what your brain is capable of accessing right now. The human brain produces several types of waves. These are not metaphorical waves. They are measurable electrical patterns that researchers can observe and record. Different types of brain waves correspond to different states of consciousness, different capacities for learning, different levels of creative output, and different abilities to access what can only be described as expanded awareness. The brain waves that are most relevant to chosen ones in a season of transition are 2 specific frequencies. The first is called theta, which operates between 4 and 8 cycles per second. The second is called gamma, which operates at the highest measurable range of brain activity. Theta is the frequency of the in-between state. It is the frequency that the brain produces when you are not fully asleep but not fully alert. It is the frequency of deep meditation, of creative breakthroughs, of the kind of learning that bypasses the critical analytical mind and goes directly into the deeper structures of memory and intuition. Research has shown that children spend a significant portion of their waking hours in theta. This is why children learn language at a rate that no adult can replicate. This is why children can absorb new environments and new concepts with a flexibility that most adults have lost. Not because children are more intelligent, but because their brains are more frequently operating in the frequency that makes deep learning possible. As people grow into adulthood, the demands of survival, of responsibility, of constant sensory input and social performance gradually train the brain away from theta and toward higher alert states. This is not a moral failure. It is an adaptation. The adult world requires a kind of vigilance that theta does not support. But the cost of that adaptation is significant because theta is also the frequency of intuition. It is the frequency at which the brain is most capable of receiving information that goes beyond what the five senses are delivering. It is the frequency at which something that might be called divine communication becomes most accessible to the human nervous system. And most adults have been trained so thoroughly out of that state that they can only access it accidentally, in the moments just before sleep, in the rare morning when the alarm does not interrupt, in the specific quality of silence that comes during deep prayer or deep worship. Gamma, on the other hand, is the frequency of peak performance. It is the frequency associated with moments of sudden clarity, with what researchers sometimes call eureka experiences, with the state of effortless flow in which a musician plays beyond their training. A writer finds words they did not know they possessed. A leader sees a solution that was invisible to everyone in the room. Gamma is not a constant state for most people. It arrives in flashes, in moments, in those brief windows when everything aligns and something exceptional emerges. But in individuals who have been described across history as exceptional, as gifted, as called, gamma activity in the brain is measurably higher and more consistent than in the general population. Now here is where the come deeply personal for you. The waiting season that you have been enduring, the isolation, the stripping away of noise and distraction, the forced stillness of a season, where the usual channels of achievement and forward momentum have been largely closed. That season has been doing something in your brain that you could not have engineered through effort alone. It has been creating the conditions for theta and gamma to restore themselves. The silence of your waiting season has been, in neurological terms, a recalibration, and you did not know it. You thought you were falling behind, but your brain has been quietly coming back online. This is what Dr. James Rivers spent more than 30 years trying to understand. Dr. Rivers is a neuroscientist whose career has taken him through some of the most significant research institutions in the world, including work connected to MIT and to research programs originally developed in collaboration with NASA. Programs NASA designed to understand how the human brain performs under extreme conditions, and more importantly, how to restore peak neurological function in individuals whose brain activity has been suppressed by prolonged stress, by long seasons of pressure, and by the kind of sustained uncertainty that erodes cognitive clarity over time. What Dr. Rivers and his research team discovered after years of studying thousands of participants across multiple long-term studies is that the brain has an extraordinary capacity to return to its optimal frequency, that theta and gamma do not disappear permanently in adulthood. They go dormant, and dormant is not the same as gone. Dormant means waiting for the right conditions to reactivate. And the research identified something remarkable. The right conditions do not require years of meditation training. They do not require any special equipment. They do not require pharmaceutical intervention or invasive technology. They require a specific kind of acoustic environment delivered for a specific duration at a specific frequency that the brain can recognize and synchronize with. This principle is called brainwave entrainment, and it is based on one of the most well-established properties of the human brain, which is that the brain has a natural tendency to synchronize its own electrical activity with rhythmic external stimuli. When you hear a rhythm, your brain does not simply perceive it, it begins to match it. This is why music changes your mood. This is why certain environments make you more creative. This is why a thunderstorm can make you feel simultaneously anxious and calm. Your brain is always listening, always adjusting, always trying to find synchronization with the frequency of its environment. Brainwave entrainment simply makes that process intentional. Instead of leaving your brain's frequency to the mercy of whatever environment surrounds you, which, in the modern world, tends to be a high-stress, high-distraction environment that pushes the brain into chronic alert states, entrainment delivers a precise acoustic signal that invites the brain to shift into a specific and optimal frequency. The tool that came out of Dr. Rivers' research is called the Genius Wave, and the name is not a marketing phrase. It is a description of the specific brainwave pattern that the audio is designed to activate, the gamma wave, the wave that research associates with peak cognitive performance, with creative breakthrough, with the kind of clarity that allows a chosen one to not just recognize the open door, but to walk through it with confidence and precision. The Genius Wave is a 7-minute audio program. And yes, the 7 minutes that were described in the Threshold Protocol are directly connected to this, because the research identified 7 minutes as the optimal duration for the brain to complete a full entrainment cycle without generating the kind of cognitive fatigue that longer sessions can produce. 7 minutes is not an arbitrary number. It is a result. It is what the data showed across thousands of participants as the threshold at which the brain achieves meaningful synchronization without overshooting into depletion. The audio uses a combination of binaural beats and isochronic tones, precisely calibrated frequencies delivered through stereo sound in a way that creates measurable changes in brainwave activity. You do not have to understand the mechanism for it to work. You do not have to concentrate or meditate or do anything special. You simply listen. With headphones if possible, though some versions of the program work through speakers as well. And over the course of 7 minutes, your brain begins to shift. Theta reactivates. Gamma becomes accessible. The hippocampus, which is the region of the brain most responsible for memory consolidation and the integration of new information, becomes more active. And the result, for thousands of people who have used this tool, is not a temporary mood shift. It is a measurable, repeatable change in cognitive clarity, creative capacity, and the ability to recognize and act on opportunity. There is a woman named Sandra who found the Genius Wave during one of the most disorienting seasons of her life. She had left a career she had spent a decade building because something in her knew it was not her purpose. But the new direction she had sensed was not yet clear enough to follow confidently. She was in exactly the kind of between space that chosen ones know well. She started using the 7-minute audio every morning before she did anything else. Within 3 weeks, she told Dr. Rivers' team that she had made 2 decisions she had been paralyzed about for months, both with a clarity that surprised her. Within 2 months, a professional opportunity arrived through a connection she had not anticipated, and she recognized it immediately as the door she had been positioned for. She said the most significant change was not external, it was internal. She said it felt like the fog that had been sitting between her and her own thinking had finally lifted. There is also a man named David who had been carrying a creative calling for years without the ability to access it consistently. He was a builder by trade and a writer by calling, and the two had never seemed to coexist. After 60 days of using the Genius Wave each morning, he completed the first draft of something he had been unable to finish for 3 years. He did not change his schedule. He did not change his environment. He changed his frequency, and the frequency changed everything. Here is what you need to know before this becomes about numbers and policies, and this is important, so receive it carefully. Some of you are going to feel a resistance right now, a voice that says this sounds too simple, or too good, or not quite spiritual enough to trust. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is the trained skepticism of someone who has been disappointed before, someone who has reached for tools and programs and resources that promised transformation and delivered very little. That skepticism is valid. It was earned, and it deserves to be honored. But here is the difference. This is not a promise of transformation in exchange for belief. This is a neurological tool backed by decades of peer-reviewed research, designed to do one specific thing, which is to give your brain access to the frequencies it was always designed to operate, at the frequencies that the stress and noise of your waiting season have been suppressing. You are not being asked to believe harder. You are being invited to listen for 7 minutes. And what happens after that belongs to you. The Genius Wave is normally priced at $49. For a limited time, through the link in the pinned comment below this video, it is available for $39. That is the only place where this price is guaranteed. There are other places online claiming to offer the same program, but the only authorized source is the link in the pinned comment. Do not purchase from any other source, because the research team has identified counterfeit versions of the audio circulating online that have been altered in ways that make them ineffective and potentially disruptive to healthy brainwave patterns. The program comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee, not 30 days, 90 days. Because the research team understands that chosen ones in transition seasons are not always in a position to commit without assurance, and they believe in this tool enough to offer 3 full months of risk-free access. If you listen for 90 days and experience nothing of value, you receive a full refund, no questions asked, no performance required. This offer is time-sensitive. The $39 price point is part of a limited access window, and when that window closes, it returns to its standard price. If something in this message has been speaking directly to you, if the 7 minutes of the threshold protocol resonated and you want to give that practice the neurological foundation that amplifies its effect, then the link in the pinned comment is where you go. Right now, not later. Because later is a word that chosen ones have already spent too much of their season on, and your brain is ready to come back online. There is something that needs to be said before this message moves any further forward, and it needs to be said slowly, with care, because it is the kind of thing that most people in the spaces you occupy will skip past in order to get to the hopeful part. But skipping past it would be a disservice to everything you have carried. So stay here for a moment. Stay with what is real before we move into what is coming. The Genius Wave can restore your frequency. The declarations can realign your posture. The Threshold Protocol can give your faith somewhere to land. All of that is true, and all of that is available to you. But none of it erases the years. None of it pretends the waiting did not cost you something. And before you step fully into what is next, there is a sacred necessity in turning around and honestly naming what the season of waiting took from you. Not to live there, not to build a home in that grief, but to honor it, because chosen ones who never name the cost of their season tend to carry it forward in silence, and silence has a way of turning cost into shame. And what you paid was not shameful. It was significant. It deserves to be seen. So let us name it together. Let us name what the waiting took. It took time that felt irreplaceable. Years that moved past while you stood at what seemed like the same threshold, believing for something that kept not arriving on the timeline you expected. And there is a specific quality of grief that belongs to time. It is different from the grief of losing a person or a possession. It is quieter and more persistent. It is the grief of a Monday morning when you realize another week has begun and the life you were trusting for is still not visible. It is the grief of a birthday that passes, and you are still carrying the same prayers you carried at the last one. That grief is real. It does not require an apology. It requires acknowledgement, and this is yours. It took relationships that might have been. There are connections that did not form during this season because you were not in the right location, or because the isolation of the waiting pressed you inward when you needed to be moving outward, or because the version of yourself that the waiting season produced was not always easy to be close to. And that is not a character indictment. That is an honest observation about what prolonged uncertainty does to the human capacity for connection. When you are in survival mode, you do not connect the way you were designed to connect. You manage. You maintain. You keep just enough contact to prevent total isolation while protecting yourself from the vulnerability of true closeness. Because true closeness requires a kind of openness that feels dangerous when the ground beneath you is still uncertain. And so some relationships that might have deepened did not. Some friendships that might have become stayed anchors at the surface. Some connections that might have changed the trajectory of your story were never fully formed. That matters. The cost is real. It took the freedom to speak your dreams at full volume. There is a specific shrinking that happens to chosen ones in extended waiting seasons. The first time you shared your vision, the response was not what you needed. Maybe it was silence. Maybe it was well-meaning concern dressed up as caution. Maybe it was someone you respected looking at you with an expression that said that is a beautiful idea, but, and everything after the but landed somewhere in your chest and stayed there. And so you started editing. You started presenting smaller versions of what you actually believed. You started speaking about your future in careful, hedged, modest language, not because you stopped believing, but because the full version felt too exposed, too vulnerable, too large for the room you were currently standing in. And somewhere in that editing process, you may have lost the habit of speaking your dreams at full volume, even to yourself. The voice that once said, "This is what I am made for," became a quieter voice, a more careful voice, a voice that checks the room before it speaks. That shrinking was a protection, but it was also a loss, and it is worth naming. It took the easy trust in your own instincts. Before the extended season of waiting, you had a certain confidence in your own perception. You believed what you felt. You followed what you sensed. You made moves based on an internal knowing that you trusted. But waiting has a particular way of eroding that trust. When you believe something strongly, and the evidence of it does not arrive for a long time, the mind begins to audit the belief, begins to ask whether you misheard, whether you misread, whether the confidence you felt was with genuine discernment or simply your own desires dressed up in spiritual language. And after enough of those audits, the instinct itself becomes unreliable in your own estimation, not because it changed, but because you stopped trusting it. And chosen ones who have lost trust in their own God-given instincts are chosen ones who move more slowly than they were designed to move, who second-guess the open doors, who need more confirmation than heaven intended to provide before they take the step that was always going to require some measure of faith. Now, before we move forward, there is a figure from the ancient text that belongs in this moment. Not the triumphant version of his story, not the part that gets preached on Sunday mornings when the room needs to leave feeling encouraged. The earlier part, the part that most people do not linger in long enough to understand what it actually cost him. Joseph, the dreamer, the one with the coat and the vision, and the clarity about his future that arrived before any of the circumstances that would confirm it. Joseph received his dream when he was 17 years old. A full, vivid, specific picture of what his life was going to become. Not a vague spiritual impression, a detailed, directional, unmistakable revelation about the position of influence and purpose that was being prepared for him. And then the season began. His brothers, the people closest to him, the people who shared his blood and his table and his history, were the first to reject what they saw in him. They did not simply disagree with his dream. They were threatened by it. And threatened people do not always respond with conversation. Sometimes they respond with action. And the action they took stripped Joseph of the visible symbol of his identity, threw him into a pit, and sold him to strangers headed to a place he had never been, to a life he had never chosen, into a season that bore no visible resemblance to the dream he had been given. And that is where most people stop the story to get to the resolution. But stay in the pit for a moment. Stay in the years of slavery. Stay in the prison cell that came after the false accusation. Stay in the moment when the one person who said he would remember Joseph forgot him the moment his own situation improved. Stay in the counting of the days, the wondering, the praying into what must have felt like an empty room, the trying to hold on to the dream when everything around him said the dream was either wrong or over or both. Joseph spent approximately 13 years between the dream and its fulfillment. 13 years of a waiting season that had no visible signs of progress for long stretches at a time. 13 years of being overlooked, misrepresented, used, forgotten, and confined. And in all of that, the text says something quietly remarkable. It says that God was with him. Not that God explained everything. Not that God fast-forwarded the suffering, but that God was present within it. And that the character being formed in Joseph during those 13 years was precisely the character that the assignment of his life would ultimately require. We will come to the resolution. We will come to the door, opening and the elevation and the moment of recognition, but not yet. Because the chosen ones listening to this message right now need to know that the cost they have paid is not shameful, that the years they have spent in what felt like a pit or a prison were not wasted years, that the stripping and the waiting and the forgetting and the confusion were not evidence of divine rejection, but of divine formation. And that the Joseph who would have arrived at the palace at 17, before the pit, before the prison, before the 13 years, would not have had the capacity to carry what the palace required. You are not to be Joseph. You are in the middle of your Joseph season. And the middle of the Joseph season does not look like progress. It looks like containment. It looks like delay. It feels like something went wrong. But the text is clear about what was actually happening beneath the surface of what looked like nothing. God was positioning. God was preparing. God was constructing an architecture in Joseph's character and capacity that no classroom, no shortcut, and no easy road could have produced. What was taken from you in the waiting was real. The relationships, the time, the freedom to dream loudly, the easy trust in your own knowing. These are legitimate losses, and they deserve to be named and honored and held with care. But they were not taken by an indifferent universe or an absent God. They were offered up in a season that was always moving toward something. And the something it was moving toward is closer now than it has ever been. The grief of the waiting and the promise of what is coming are not in conflict with each other. You are allowed to feel both. You are allowed to stand in the honest complexity of someone who has paid a real price and also believes, with everything that remains, that the price was part of a process, and the process is not finished. and the finishing, when it comes, will make sense of everything that the middle made impossible to understand. Hold that. Let it sit in your body without rushing to the resolution. Because the resolution is real and it is close. But the soul that has not yet named the cost will carry it forward as hidden weight. And you were not designed to enter your new location carrying the unnamed grief of the old one. Name it, honor it, and then get ready. Because what is coming next is the language that will give your waiting season an entirely new frame. A frame built not from your current vantage point, but from a perspective so ancient and so precise that it has been used for thousands of years to describe exactly the season you are standing in right now. Before this part of the message begins, there is something that needs to be established, because what you are about to receive is not a new idea dressed in old clothing. It is genuinely old. It is the kind of old that carries weight precisely because it has been true across so many centuries and so many cultures and so many individual human stories that its accuracy has been tested beyond what any modern framework can claim. And the reason it matters for you today, specifically for you in this specific season, is that the language you have been using to describe your waiting has been too small for what is actually happening. And when the language is too small, the perception shrinks to fit the language. And when the perception shrinks, the soul contracts around a story that is far below the reality of what God is doing. So today the language gets larger. Today you receive a frame that is ancient enough to hold everything you have been through and precise enough to name exactly where you are standing right now. But first, a brief orientation so that what also lands properly. The coemption that sits at the center of this message, the core of what chosen ones in a season of relocation are actually experiencing, is this: you are not lost, you are not stalled, you are not being punished for something you cannot identify. You are in the final hours of a season of sacred preparation, standing at the threshold of a transition so significant that it required an unusual amount of time to build the internal architecture necessary to sustain it. That is the emotional core. And the two ancient concepts that speak most directly to that experience are the ones that this section is built around. The first is kairos. In the ancient Greek language, there were two completely distinct words for time, and this distinction matters more than most modern conversations about faith ever acknowledge. The first word was chronos. Chronos is the time of clocks and calendars. It is sequential, measurable, linear, and democratic in the sense that every human being receives the same amount of it per day, regardless of who they are or what they are called to. Chronos is the time that has been making you feel late. Chronos is the time you have been counting, the years, the months, the Mondays, the birthdays. Chronos is the time that creates the illusion that God is slow, because Chronos moves in one direction at one speed, and it does not bend for prayers or promises, or even for the most sincere and sustained faith. But Kairos is an entirely different category of time. Kairos is not sequential. Kairos is not measurable in the way that Chronos is. Kairos refers to the appointed moment, the right moment, the moment that carries within itself a unique quality of readiness, a convergence of preparation and opportunity and divine permission that creates a window unlike any other window that has existed before it or will exist after it. Kairos is the moment when everything that has been building beneath the surface suddenly becomes visible above it. Kairos is the moment when the waiting was not simply endured, but completed. And here is the distinction that changes everything for chosen ones in transition. You have been measuring your life in Chronos while God has been building your story in Kairos. You have been looking at the calendar and concluding that you are behind, while heaven has been looking at the architecture of your preparation and concluding that you are almost ready. The Chronos timeline said this should have happened 3 years ago. The Kairos timeline says it cannot happen until the specific convergence of the internal readiness and external arrangement that God is completing right now. And Kairos cannot be rushed. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot be produced by more effort or more straining or more performance. It arrives when the conditions are genuinely met, not when they appear to be met, not when you are tired enough of waiting that you decide to call it close enough, but when they are actually, fully, precisely met. And the most important thing about Kairos is that it does not announce itself in advance with great fanfare. It arrives quietly. It arrives in what looks like an ordinary moment. It arrives in a conversation you did not plan, a door that opens without you knocking, a shift that happens so naturally that you almost miss the miracle of it because nothing about it looks miraculous from the outside. Kairos moments are often only recognizable in retrospect, which is why chosen ones need the kind of internal calibration that the threshold protocol and the 7 minutes of silence are designed to produce. Because if your frequency is suppressed by the noise and the stress of a prolonged waiting season, you can miss a Kairos moment entirely. You can walk past the open door because you were too exhausted from knocking on the closed one to notice that a new one had appeared beside it. This is your Kairos moment. Not soon, not eventually, now. The convergence that this message represents, the fact that these words are reaching you on this day in this season of your life, is not Chronos delivering content to a passive audience. It is Kairos delivering a specific word to a specific person at the specific moment when that person is ready to receive it. And you would not be here if you were not ready. Kairos does not waste its moments. The second ancient concept is carried in a Hebrew word, and the word is kava. It is typically translated into English as the word wait, as in, those who wait upon the Lord. And for centuries, that translation has allowed well-meaning people to counsel chosen ones in difficult seasons with the instruction to simply wait, to be patient, to endure, to sit still and not complain, and trust that something will eventually happen. And while the intention behind that counsel is genuine, the translation has done a quiet injustice to what the original word actually describes, because kava does not mean passive waiting. Kava is a word that comes from the imagery of rope making, specifically the process of twisting individual strands together under tension to create something far stronger than any single strand could ever be on its own. When an ancient rope maker practiced kava, they were not sitting still. They were actively engaged in a demanding process that required both patience and pressure. The strands had to be twisted together with enough tension to bond them, enough consistency to maintain the pattern, enough time to allow the fibers to set in their new configuration. And the result of that process was not a weaker strand. It was a rope capable of holding weight that no individual fiber could have supported. Now hear this in the context of your waiting season. Every year that has felt like delay has been a strand. Every disappointment that did not destroy you, every closed door that did not make you quit, every night of honest prayer that felt unanswered but did not make you stop praying, every morning you showed up to your faith even when your feelings were not cooperating, every friendship that tested your character, every loss that refined your clarity about what actually matters, every moment of isolation that pushed you deeper into the knowing of who you are when no one is applauding, all of it has been kava. All of it has been the active, intentional, purposeful twisting together of strands under tension to create something that could not have been produced any other way. You were not passively sitting still waiting for God to do something. You were being actively assembled. The tension you felt was not cruelty. It was the necessary pressure of the formation process. The strands of your character, your calling, your capacity, your compassion were being twisted together under precisely the right amount of pressure to produce the kind of integrity that will sustain what is about to be placed in your hands. And kava does not end with the strands. It ends with the rope, strong, unified, tested, and ready for the weight it was made to carry. You are not being delayed. You are being assembled, and the assembly is in its final stage. Now, alongside these two ancient concepts, there is a third reality that speaks directly to the physical and spiritual geography of where chosen ones often find themselves in the season just before the breakthrough. And it is called the wilderness season. The wilderness is not a random metaphor. It is a precise of a specific kind of sacred geography that appears repeatedly in the most significant stories of transformation in the ancient texts. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he received his assignment. David spent years hiding in caves and running from the very king he was anointed to succeed. Elijah collapsed under a tree in the wilderness and asked God to let him die before an angel came and prepared food for the journey ahead. And the central figure of the Christian narrative spent 40 days in the wilderness before his public ministry began. In every case, the wilderness was not a detour from the calling. It was the direct preparation for it. The wilderness has specific characteristics that chosen ones will recognize immediately. It is marked by an unusual degree of isolation, not the chosen isolation of someone who has intentionally withdrawn, but the enforced isolation of someone who has been moved away from the familiar, away from the crowd, away from the systems and structures that once provided identity and belonging. It is marked by a stripping of what the theologians call false identity, the layers of self that were built to perform for others rather than to express the genuine self that God formed. It is marked by a testing of whether the calling is really the calling, whether the faith is really the faith, whether the character that has been claimed is actually the character that exists under pressure. And it is marked always by a specific kind of silence, not the silence of God's absence, the silence of God's nearness. The kind of silence that is so full it is almost uncomfortable. The kind of silence that invites the most honest version of every conversation you have ever had with yourself. The wilderness does not allow pretense to survive. It is too sparse an environment for pretense to find food. And so everything that was pretense falls away. And what remains, what endures the wilderness, is what is real. And what is real is what the new season requires. The wilderness is not your home. It was never meant to be your permanent address. It was designed as a passage, not a residence. And the specific quality of the isolation you have been experiencing in this season, the feeling of being removed from the center of things, of watching other people's lives from a distance that feels both literal and spiritual, that feeling is not evidence that you have been forgotten. It is evidence that you are in the final stretch of a wilderness season that is about to give way to the appointed territory on the other side. And here is what the ancient record is consistent about. Chosen ones who come through the wilderness come through it, changed in ways that cannot be produced by any other environment. Moses comes out of the wilderness and stands before Pharaoh with the authority that 40 years of palace education could not have produced. David comes out of the caves with a leadership capacity that the court of Saul could never have developed in him. The wilderness produces a quality of grounded, unperformable, unshakable knowing that only comes from having been reduced to what is essential and discovering that what is essential is enough. You are coming out. The wilderness has done what it was designed to do. The strands have been twisted under the right tension for long enough. The Kairos moment has been building beneath the surface of your Chronos timeline, and the convergence that is approaching is not a reward for surviving the wilderness. It is the natural and appointed outcome of a process that has been deliberate, intentional, and carefully overseen from the beginning. Different this. Let it settle past your mind and into the part of you that has been carrying the weight of the waiting as if it were evidence of something wrong. Nothing went wrong. Everything has been going exactly as it was designed to go, and you are not behind the schedule. You are the schedule, and the schedule says now, something is moving. You may not have the words for it yet, but somewhere beneath the surface of your daily life, beneath the routines and the responsibilities, and the quiet prayers you have been sending upward, without always knowing if they were landing anywhere, something has begun to shift. It is subtle enough that the analytical part of your mind might want to dismiss it. It is real enough that the deeper part of you, the part that has been faithfully holding the dream through every season of doubt and delay, that part already knows. Something is moving, and what is moving is not small. Before this section names the 3 specific areas where that movement is about to become visible in your life, there is something that needs to be said about the nature of divine transition. Because chosen ones in a season of relocation often make a specific mistake when the shift begins. They expect the transition to feel triumphant from the first moment. They expect the internal experience of breakthrough to match the external imagery of breakthrough, trumpets, and open doors, and a sudden, overwhelming flood of clarity that erases all previous uncertainty in a single afternoon. And when the shift arrives quietly, as it almost always does, they miss it, or they discount it, or they tell themselves that a shift this undramatic cannot possibly be the one they were believing for. But the most significant transitions in the lives of chosen ones have almost always begun quietly. They have begun with a settling, a peace that arrives without announcement, a clarity that does not shout but simply remains, a direction that does not dazzle but simply holds steady under examination. The dramatic external changes come later. They are the fruit of a shift that began in the interior, in the deep, quiet places where God does the primary work before the world sees any of it. And if you are already beginning to notice a subtle quality of peace or clarity or direction that was not there in the same way 3 months ago, do not discount it. Do not require it to be louder or larger to be real. It is real, and it is the beginning of the 3 movements that are about to become undeniable in your life. The first movement is happening in the territory of your relationships. Something is reorganizing in the relational landscape of your life, and it is doing so with a precision that should eventually astonish you. People who were placed in your path for a specific season of your journey are beginning to naturally shift to the periphery. Not through drama, not through conflict, not through the kind of painful rupture that relationship endings sometimes produce, but through a gentle and natural recession that feels more like a tide going out than a door being slammed. And this is important to understand, because chosen ones in transition sometimes interpret the recession of certain relationships as rejection, as evidence that they have done something wrong, as confirmation of the old story that they are ultimately too much or not enough for the people around them. But what's actually happening is a divine reorganization of relational proximity. The people whose assignment in your story was to walk with you through the wilderness are completing that assignment. Their presence in your life was genuine, and it mattered, and the love was real. But the new location that God has been preparing for you requires a different kind of companion, not a better person than who you have been walking with. A different person. Someone whose gifts and vision and capacity align specifically with the territory you are about to enter. And the recession of the old is always the preparation for the arrival of the new. What you should not do in this movement is try to hold on to the relationships that are naturally receding. The chosen one who grips the old connections out of fear of the unknown finds themselves trying to drag the old season into the new one, which is the surest way to delay the arrival of the people who are already being positioned to meet you at the threshold of your new location. What you can trust is this: the right people are already in motion toward you. Some of them are in locations you have not yet visited. Some of them are in communities you have not yet joined. Some of them are connected to the opportunity that is already being arranged, and the specificity with which they will recognize you, and you will recognize them, will be one of the clearest confirmations you receive that the new season is real and that God's arrangements are precise. So in this relational movement, the instruction is to release with love what is naturally releasing, and to hold with openness the expectation of what is coming. Do not downsize your relational vision to fit the disappointments of the old season. The relationships that are coming are built for the person you have become, not the person you were when the waiting began. And the person you have become, the one who has been assembled by the tension of the wilderness, is someone worth knowing, someone worth building with, someone who has the depth and the tested character that genuine relational intimacy requires. The second movement is happening in the territory of your purpose. For a long time in this waiting season, the question of what you are supposed to do with your life has felt like a question without a clean answer. You have had impressions, you have had inclinations, you have had moments of clarity, followed by periods of confusion that made the clarity feel like it might have been wishful thinking. And the inability to answer the purpose question with confidence has been one of the most quietly exhausting dimensions of the waiting. Because chosen ones are not built for purposelessness, they are built for meaning. And the absence of a clear, confirmable sense of direction creates a specific kind of internal friction that no amount of distraction can fully resolve. But something is changing in this territory. The question that once felt enormous and unanswerable is beginning to simplify. Not because the calling is getting smaller, but because your relationship to it is getting clearer, and the clarity is not arriving all at once. It is arriving in the form of a specific next step, not the whole map, not the 10-year plan, not the full picture of every season that will follow this one, just the next step. One direction, one small and concrete and actionable movement that, if you take it, will lead to the confirmation of the step after it, and then the step after that, and then the one after that. This is how divine purpose reveals itself to chosen ones in transition, not in a single overwhelming vision that answers every question simultaneously, but in a progression, a step, then another step, then another. And the first step is always smaller than you expected. It is always more accessible than the size of the calling would suggest, because God does not ask chosen ones to leap from where they are to the fullness of what they are called to in a single bound. He asks them to take a step that is directly in front of them, trusting that the step after it will become visible once they are standing in the place that the first step leads to. What you should not do in this movement is wait for the complete map before you take the first step. The chosen ones who require total clarity before they move are the ones who remain at the threshold indefinitely. Because total clarity is not how purpose reveals itself in the season of transition. What you can trust is this: the step that feels right, the one that keeps returning to your thinking no matter how many times you try to dismiss it as too small or too impractical or not yet fully formed. That step is probably the step, and taking it, even imperfectly, even without full certainty, is the act of faith that unlocks the next revelation. Your purpose is not lost. It is not still hidden. It is currently being revealed at the pace that the season of transition requires. And the revelation is already further along than your feelings of uncertainty are acknowledging. The third movement is happening in the territory of your resources and your opportunities. This is the area where chosen ones tend to carry the most accumulated tension, because resources and opportunities are the most external, and therefore the most visible measure of whether the waiting season is actually ending. And for a long time, the visibility of your resources and opportunities has not matched the internal sense of calling and preparation that you have been carrying. You have felt prepared for more than the material circumstances of your life have reflected. And that gap between the internal knowing and the external evidence has been one of the primary sources of the grief that was named in the earlier part of this message. But the gap is closing. It is closing not through your increased striving, not through the performance of more effort or more hustle or more strategic positioning of yourself in the right rooms. It is closing because the appointed time has arrived. And when appointed time arrives, resources and opportunities do not trickle in cautiously. They align. They arrive in the right configuration, at the right moment, through the right channels, in a way that looks, from the outside, like luck, but that chosen ones recognize immediately as the fingerprints of a God who has been arranging things in the invisible architecture of their story for longer than they knew. What you should not do in this movement is try to manufacture what is being arranged. The chosen one who, at the moment of divine arrangement, panics and reaches for the old familiar strategies of striving and forcing and making things happen through sheer will, that chosen one tends to step in front of what God is doing and create friction where alignment was already being prepared. What you can trust is this: what belongs to you cannot pass you. The opportunity that carries your name on it is not going to be accidentally awarded to someone else because you were not aggressive enough in pursuing it. It is appointed. Appointed things arrive with a grace and a specificity that striving could never produce. This does not mean passivity. It means aligned action. It means moving from rest rather than from panic. It means taking the steps that are clearly in front of you without manufacturing steps that are not yet clearly indicated. It means holding your hands open rather than gripping what is trying to arrive with so much tension that you crush the very thing you have been waiting to receive. Something is moving in all three of these territories simultaneously. Relationships reorganizing, purpose clarifying, resources aligning. And the movement is not sequential. It is not happening one territory at a time. It is happening all at once, beneath the surface of what your daily experience is currently reflecting. And it is building toward a visibility that will feel sudden to the people around you, even though you standing here now will know that it was never sudden at all. It was always the outcome of the appointed time meeting the assembled person. Kairos meeting the one who has been through the kava of the wilderness and come out whole. If you can feel the movement in even one of these three territories as you listen to this, if something in your chest recognized itself in any of what was just described, then do not let this moment pass without marking it. Type the words "I receive it" in the comments right now. Not as a ritual, not as a performance, but as a declaration that you are open, that you are not gripping the old season so tightly that the new one cannot get into your hands. Type "I receive it," and let those words be the internal posture of someone who has done the wilderness, who has paid the cost, who has been assembled by the kava, and who is now standing at the threshold of the new location, with their hands open, and their eyes expectant, and their spirit genuinely, honestly ready. The movement has begun, and you are already inside it. The three movements that were just named are already in motion. The relationships reorganizing, the purpose clarifying, the resources aligning. All of it is real, and all of it is building toward a visibility that will eventually speak for itself. But before this message moves into the practical territory of what your hands should actually do in this season, there is something that belongs specifically to you, something that is not about what is coming, or what has been, or what God is arranging. In the invisible architecture of your story, this part is simply about who you are right now, in this body, in this season, with everything the wilderness has done in you and everything the waiting has produced through you. Because chosen ones in transition often arrive at the threshold of the new season without a clear language for who they have become. And you cannot fully step into a new location while still carrying only the identity language of the old one. So today you receive a name. Not a name given to replace the one you were born with, but a name that describes the specific quality of person that the season you have just walked through has made you. A name for the version of yourself that exists on this side of the wilderness. A name that heaven has known about you for longer than you have known it about yourself. You are a cycle breaker. Take a moment with that. Let it land before the mind begins to analyze it. Cycle breaker. Two words that carry an enormous weight of meaning when they are applied with accuracy, and they are being applied to you with accuracy today. A cycle breaker is a person who absorbs the full weight of a generational or ritual pattern that has been operating in their family line, or their community, or their personal history, absorbs it completely, without passing it forward. They are the person in whose life a thing that has been true for generations stops being true. Not because they are the strongest person who ever lived in that lineage, not because they are the most talented, or the most educated, or the most favored in any conventional sense, but because they were willing to feel the full weight of what previous generations carried without putting it down onto the people who come after them. Because they were willing to stand in the gap between what was is and what should be, at great personal cost, without requiring immediate recognition or reward for the standing. This is you. The season you have endured has not simply been about your personal breakthrough. It has been about the interruption of a pattern, something that was inherited, something that has operated beneath the surface of your story for longer than your own conscious memory reaches, has been meeting its end in your life. The loneliness, the striving without arriving, the believing without seeing, the repeated experience of almost but not yet. These are not random afflictions. They are the last expressions of a cycle that you agreed, at a level deeper than conscious choice, to be the last carrier of. And the weight of being the last carrier is significant. It is the weight of carrying something that was never supposed to be yours in the first place, all the way to the place where it can be set down permanently. And you have carried it. You are still standing, and that means the cycle ends with you. Now here is what cycle breakers need to understand about the inheritance they leave. What they break is not just theirs. The interruption of a cycle sends its effects both forward and backward. forward into the lives of every person who comes after you, every child and grandchild, and person whose life will intersect with yours in the new season, who will benefit from something they will not even know was a struggle because you resolved it before it reached them. And in some ways that are mysterious and not fully explainable in linear terms, backward as well. The resolution of a pattern in one life creates a permission in the wider story that reaches in directions the mind cannot fully track. You are not just receiving a new location. You are creating one. You are not just stepping into a new life. You are making it possible for others to imagine a new life because they will be able to point to yours and say someone like me made it through. Someone who carried what I carry, who came from where I come from, who faced what I face, and they made it through. And that witness is not a small thing. That witness is one of the most powerful forces available to a chosen one, because it converts private breakthrough into communal permission. Now here is the guided visualization that belongs with this name. And before you dismiss this as too abstract or too experiential for your taste, stay with it, because visualization is not escapism. It is rehearsal. It is the practice of inhabiting the future before the future becomes present, which is one of the most consistent practices found in the lives of people who successfully navigated major transitions. The imagination is not opposed to faith. It is one of the primary tools that faith uses to make what is not yet seen feel real enough to move toward. Picture yourself standing at a threshold. Not a metaphorical one this time, an actual physical image. A door frame, stone or wood, worn smooth by years of hands passing through it. It is old but solid. It has held its shape through every kind of weather. And you are standing in it, not quite inside what is ahead, not quite back in what is behind. You are in the threshold itself, which is the most honest picture of where you are right now. Now turn and look behind you, not with fear, not with the heaviness of someone who is not sure they can leave, but with the clear eyes of someone who knows exactly what they are looking at and has decided what they are choosing to do with it. Look at the landscape of the season you are leaving. See the years it took. See the places it moved through. See the relationships that shaped it, and the losses that marked it, and the prayers that filled it, and the faith that, somehow, impossibly, survived it. See all of it clearly. And then do something specific with what you see. Name 3 things that the wilderness gave you, that you are taking with you through the threshold. Not the pain, not the scars, not the unresolved grief. Those go here, at the threshold, on the ground in front of you, set down gently and left behind. But the things the wilderness produced in you that are genuinely yours now, that are woven into who you are and cannot be separated from the person you have become. Name them. They might be a compassion you did not have before the waiting, a silence you learned to trust that you previously feared, a clarity about what matters that only arrives when everything that does not matter is stripped away, a capacity for persistence that no easy road could have produced. Name 3. Let them be specific, and know that they are the gifts the wilderness always intended to give you, even when nothing about the wilderness felt like gifting. Now turn forward. Look at what is ahead. And here is where many chosen ones in this visualization stumble, because they try to see the future with their natural eyes, which means they try to construct a specific picture of what the new location looks like, what the new relationships look like, what the breakthrough moment looks like. And when the picture does not come together with enough clarity and detail, they conclude that they cannot see it, which they take as evidence that it is not real or not for them. But do not look for the details. Look for the light, just the light. Because what comes through the threshold In every story of transition and relocation and divine breakthrough is not first a detailed blueprint. It is first a quality, a warmth, a sense of spaciousness that is different from the compressed, contracted feeling of the wilderness. A sense that the air on the other side of the threshold is different from the air on this side. Lighter, perhaps, or fuller, or simply less heavy with the specific weight that the wilderness carries. Find the light. It is there, even if it is only at the edge of your imagination right now. Even if it feels like the faintest warmth rather than a full and blazing sunrise. Find it and stand in it for a moment. Let your body register the feeling of standing in it. Let your nervous system receive the signal that something good is ahead, that the threshold is real, that the other side exists and is already lit and is already waiting for the person you have become. And now hear this. You are not just imagining this scene. You are already standing in it. The visualization is not a projection of a future that has not begun. It is a perception of a present that your natural sight has not yet caught up to. You are already in the threshold. The old season is already behind you. The new location is already ahead. And the step through is not a giant leap into an unknown void. It is a small, natural, unhurried movement of a person who has been prepared for exactly this crossing by exactly this season. Now the blessings, short and simple and specific, because blessings are not lectures, they are gifts, and gifts should not come with long explanations. May the next door you walk through carry the piece of something that was made specifically for you. May the next relationship that enters your life arrive with a recognition that bypasses the need for extended explanation. May the next opportunity that finds you find a version of you that is no longer surprised by favor. May you sleep deeply in the new season. May you laugh without immediately bracing for what comes after the good. May you speak your dreams at full volume again, in rooms where the people around you lean forward instead of pulling back. May you know, in your body and not just in your theology, that you are loved by a God who has not once looked away from your story. Not once. Not even in the nights that felt like total silence. Not even in the years that felt like total stillness. He has been there. He is here. And he is already in the new location, waiting for you to arrive. You are a cycle breaker. You are the one in whose life a thing that should not have continued simply stops. And that is not a burden. That is an honor. And the honor belongs to you today, in full, without condition, without performance, without one more day of proving yourself to a season that has already completed its assignment in your life. The threshold is real, the light is ahead, and you are already in motion. The visualization you just walked through was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something. And the beginning of something always asks a practical question, not a philosophical question, not a theological question, not a question about meaning or identity or the nature of divine timing, though all of those questions matter and all of them have been addressed in the earlier parts of this message. The practical question that a threshold asks is simply this. Now that you know where you are standing, what do you do with your hands? What do you do with today? What is the specific, concrete, actionable movement that a chosen one at the threshold of a new location makes in the ordinary hours of an ordinary week? Because faith without action is not a complete thing. And chosen ones who receive a powerful message, who feel the shift in the room, who recognize themselves in every word that has been spoken, and then return to exactly the same daily patterns without making a single concrete adjustment. Those chosen ones experience the emotional residue of the message without the transformational fruit of it. The message moves through them like weather, and 2 weeks later they are back in the same contracted, waiting, uncertain posture that they carried before they heard it. Not because the message was not true, but because truth without traction does not produce movement. And movement is what the new season requires. So this section is practical. It is grounded. It is about the actual days of your actual life and what a chosen one does in those days when they are standing at the threshold of the three movements that are already in motion. Not what they feel, not what they believe in the abstract, what they actually do. And the doing organizes itself into three areas that mirror the three movements that were named in the previous section. Because the relational reorganization, the purpose clarification, and the resource alignment that heaven is orchestrating in your life are not passive processes that happen to you while you stand still. They are processes that your participation activates and accelerates. You are not a spectator in your own transition. You are a co-creator of it. And the role of co-creator requires showing up with intention. The first area of practical action concerns your relationships. The most important thing a chosen one can do in the relational territory of a season of transition is to become intentional about who receives access to their inner world. During the wilderness season, the tendency was to either isolate completely or to maintain surface-level connection with many people without genuine depth with any of them. Both of those patterns were survival adaptations. They made sense for the season, but the new season requires a different relational posture. It requires the chosen one to begin the practice of selective vulnerability, which means choosing with care and wisdom the specific people to whom they open the deeper layers of their vision, their struggle, and their becoming. This is not about becoming guarded or closed. It is about becoming discerning, because the new season is going to bring people into your life who are genuinely aligned with your calling and genuinely capable of building with you. And the chosen one who has not practiced the skill of discerning relational depth will have difficulty distinguishing those people from the ones whose presence is pleasant, but whose assignment in your story is limited. The way to begin building that discernment is simple. In your existing relationships, notice who asks questions about your vision and listens to the answer with genuine interest. Notice who responds to your progress with celebration rather than with subtle competition. Notice who speaks to who you are becoming rather than who you have been, and begin spending more intentional time with those people. Not dramatically, not with an announcement. Simply prioritize the connections that are oriented toward your future rather than the ones that are anchored only in your past. At the same time, do something specific this week. Reach out to one person whose presence has felt like an assignment rather than a comfort, a mentor, a person ahead of you in the territory you are moving into, a connection you have been meaning to pursue but have not yet initiated, and make contact, not with a lengthy explanation of where you are or what you need. Just a simple and genuine point of connection, a question, an acknowledgement of their work, a brief and honest expression of where you are and where you are headed. One contact this week. Let it be imperfect. Let it be small. Let it be the first thread of the relational web that the new season is going to build around you. The second area of practical action concerns your purpose. The most important thing a chosen one can do in the purpose territory of a season of transition is to take the small step, the one that has been returning to your thinking, the one you have been dismissing as too preliminary, too undefined, too modest relative to the size of the calling. Take that step this week, not the whole journey, not the complete plan, the step. It might be writing down the vision clearly for the first time in your own words, without the hedging and the qualifying and the careful moderating language that the wilderness taught you to use. Write it at full volume, in a private place, in a journal, or a document that no one else needs to see yet. Write exactly what you believe you are being called to in the largest and most honest version of that calling. Let the words be as large as the dream actually is. Let the page hold what the room has not always been able to hold. Write it and then read it back to yourself, and notice what happens in your body when you hear it said at full volume. It might be making one inquiry, one email, one application, one conversation with someone who is already doing in the world what you sense you are called to do. One point of contact with the territory of your purpose that moves it from the realm of internal impression to the realm of external reality. Because purpose that exists only internally is not yet fully alive. It needs to touch the external world in some form, even a small form, to begin drawing the confirmation and the connection that eventually transforms impression into assignment. It might be beginning the practice again, the creative practice, the discipline, the skill set that the wilderness caused you to neglect because survival consumed the energy that the practice required. Begin again this week, not with the pressure of productivity, not with the expectation that what you produce in the first week of returning will match the vision in your head. Simply begin. Give the practice 30 minutes this week, and then 30 minutes next week, and let the consistency of showing up do what consistency has always done, which is to convert scattered potential into focused capacity. The third area of practical action concerns your resources and opportunities. The most important thing a chosen one can do in the resource territory of a season of transition is to adjust their posture from scarcity to stewardship. This is not a financial instruction, although it has financial implications. It is a deeper adjustment in the fundamental orientation of your relationship to provision. And the adjustment is this: begin treating what you currently have as if it were already the beginning of abundance, rather than evidence of lack. This is not denial of financial reality. It is the practice of a stewardship posture that positions you to recognize and receive what is being added to what you currently hold. Concretely, this looks like several small and specific practices. It looks like tracking what comes in with gratitude rather than only tracking what goes out with anxiety. It looks like giving from what you currently have, even in small amounts, to something or someone whose mission aligns with your own calling. Because generosity in the season of transition is not foolishness. It is the activation of a principle that appears consistently in every wisdom tradition, which is that the hand that is open to give is also open to receive, while the hand that is gripped tight in scarcity has no configuration for receiving what is being offered. Give something this week, not as a transaction, not as a formula, but as a genuine expression of trust that there is more coming and that you do not need to hoard what is currently present in order to have enough. It also looks like eliminating, or at least significantly reducing, the specific financial patterns that belong to the old season rather than the new one. The spending that was comfort-driven rather than vision-driven. The financial decisions made from fear of missing out rather than from a clear sense of aligned priority. Not with condemnation for what has been, simply with the clear-eyed assessment of someone who is organizing their resources for the requirements of a new location, and who recognizes that some of the patterns that served as coping mechanisms in the wilderness are not the patterns that will serve the new territory. There is also a specific opportunity readiness practice that chosen ones in transition benefit from. It is simply this: spend 15 minutes this week getting one area of your life ready for the opportunity before the opportunity announces itself. Update the document, the profile, the portfolio, the space, the skill. Do not wait for the opportunity to arrive before you prepare for it. Because Kairos moments do not linger while you get ready. They arrive, they are visible for a window, and they move on. The chosen one who is already prepared when the Kairos moment arrives steps through it naturally. The one who is not prepared scrambles. And scrambling in the moment of divine appointment is one of the most disheartening experiences a chosen one can have. So prepare now, before the door is fully open, while it is still becoming. Get ready in the practical, unglamorous, unspectacular way that readiness actually requires. Because the spectacular moment, the one that people will eventually hear about, will only make sense because of the unspectacular preparation that preceded it. And the preparation is your job right now, today, this week, in the ordinary hours of your ordinary life, which are not actually ordinary at all. They are the hours in which the new location is being built, one small and faithful and intentional action at a time. This is what chosen ones do at the threshold. They do not wait for the breakthrough to feel worthy of action. They act from the knowledge that they are already at the threshold, that their breakthrough is already in motion, and that their participation in the practical dimensions of the transition is itself an act of faith as genuine and as powerful as any prayer they have ever prayed. Because showing up in the natural with intentional action is how chosen ones honor what heaven is doing in the supernatural. And the God who has been faithful through every day of the wildernesses is honored when you meet his faithfulness with the practical courage of someone who genuinely believes that the new location is real, that the new people are coming, that the new blessings are already appointed, and that the new life has already begun. Take the step, make the contact, write it at full volume, give from what you have, prepare the space. And let this week be the week that the transition moved from something you felt in a message to something you can see in the actual daily choices of a chosen one who has decided, fully and finally, that the waiting season is over and the new season has already begun. You made it here. Not everyone does. There are people who start a message like this and close it within the first few minutes because something in it pressed too close to something they were not yet ready to feel. There are people who hear the first section and tell themselves they will come back to it later, and later never arrives because the busyness of the day swallows the intention whole. But you stayed. You followed this all the way through, and that is not a small thing. That is not an accident. That is the evidence of someone whose spirit recognized something in this message that their mind may not have been able to fully articulate, and who trusted that recognition enough to remain. So before anything else is said in this final section, this is for you. The version of you that showed up today, even without being fully certain why. The version of you that kept listening, even through the parts that were difficult to sit with. The parts that named the cost of the waiting. The parts that asked you to feel the grief before reaching for the reframe. The version of you that did not need everything to be comfortable in order to stay present. That version of you is the one that the new season is going to require. And the fact that you have been practicing that version of yourself throughout this entire message means you are more ready than you know. You are not alone in this. That is the next thing that needs to be said, clearly and without qualification. All across the world right now, in different time zones and different languages and different personal circumstances, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. Some of them are hearing it in the early morning before anyone else in their household is awake. Some of them are listening in a parked car in a parking lot because the car is the only place in their daily life. where they have a few uninterrupted minutes to themselves. Some of them are lying on the floor of a room in the dark, not because everything is fine, but because the floor felt like the most honest place to be tonight. And every single one of them, regardless of the details of their specific season, is carrying the same core experience that you have been carrying, the knowing that there is more. The weight of the waiting, the quiet and persistent faith that refuses to fully extinguish even on the days when everything in the natural world says it should. You are in a room that is more crowded than it appears, and the people in that room are not strangers who happen to share a demographic. They are fellow chosen ones in different stages of the same essential journey. Some of them are 2 years behind where you are right now. Some of them are 2 years ahead, and the ones who are ahead are not ahead because they were more talented, or more faithful, or more deserving. They are ahead because their Kairos moment arrived before yours, and yours is arriving now, not eventually now. Here is a practice for this moment, and this one is different from the threshold protocol described earlier. This one is simpler. This one is about putting something down. Picture yourself standing outside a door, not the same door from the visualization in the earlier section. A different door. This one is the door to the new season, the new location, the new life that God has been building while you were enduring the wilderness. The door is already open. You can see the light coming through the gap at the edge of it. You can feel the warmth of the air on the other side, and in a moment, you are going to walk through it. But before you do, you are going to set something down. You are going to reach into the inside of yourself and find the specific thing that has been the heaviest to carry through this entire season. Not a list of things, one thing, the heaviest one. It might be a disappointment that you have been holding so carefully and so long that it has become a part of how you define yourself. It might be an offense, something that was done to you or said about you that you have been carrying without realizing how much weight it has added to every step. It might be a version of yourself that you have been grieving, the one who was more certain, more energetic, more confident before the wilderness did what wildernesses do. It might be a relationship that ended in a way that never fully resolved, that left a question hanging in the air that no conversation was ever able to fully answer. Whatever it is, find it. Let it become specific and clear in your mind. Now set it down, gently, not with force, not with the performance of someone who is trying to prove they have let go. With the quiet, deliberate movement of someone who has simply decided that this object of grief or offense or loss is not coming through the door with them. It belongs to the season that is ending, and the season that is ending is the appropriate place for it to stay. You are not abandoning it carelessly. You are releasing it intentionally. You are leaving it at the threshold, because you are choosing to enter the new location with your hands open and your chest unencumbered by what the old location required you to carry. Set it down, breathe, and feel, even briefly, even just for this moment, what it is like to stand at that door without that weight in your hands. That feeling, however faint it might be right now, is the feeling of the new season. And it is yours to return to every time the old weight tries to find its way back into your hands. Now, the practical words. Because this message has been a long one, and you have given it your genuine attention, and that deserves to be honored with a clear and honest closing, rather than a gradual fade into nothing. If this message has meant something to you today, if it landed somewhere specific and real in the interior of your life, there are a few ways to respond to that, and none of them are obligations. They are invitations. The first is to like this video, not as a transaction, Not because a number on a screen carries spiritual weight, but because the algorithm that determines who sees this message next is listening for signals that tell it this content is worth showing to the next person. And somewhere right now, there is a chosen one who is having the worst Monday of their recent life, and they have not yet found the language for what they are going through. Your like is a quiet act of generosity toward that person. It costs you nothing. It could mean everything to them. The second is to share this. Again, not for the sake of numbers, but because you almost certainly know someone who is in the middle of a waiting season that is pressing them toward the edge of what they can endure. You do not have to write them a message explaining why you are sending it. You do not have to have a conversation about it first. Just send it. Let the message do the work. Let it find them the way it found you. The third is to subscribe, because what is being built in this space is not accidental. These messages are not being created for general consumption. They are being created for chosen ones in specific seasons who need specific language for what they are going through. And if this message found you today, there is a meaningful probability that what comes next will find you in the next season. Subscribe so that it can. The fourth is for those who feel led to give. This content is free. It will remain free. But creating it, maintaining the space where it lives, and ensuring that it continues to reach the chosen ones who need it, that requires resources. If this community has genuinely given you something of value, and if you are in a season where giving is something you are able to do, there's a way to support what is being built here through the link in the descriptions. Regardless of size, goes directly toward making sure this message reaches further tomorrow than it did today. Not for the sake of reach as an end in itself, for the sake of the chosen one who is 3 weeks from now going to type a question into a search bar that leads them to exactly this kind of content. Give so that when they arrive, something is waiting for them. And one final word about the genius wave, not as a pressure, not as a condition, but as a genuine and honest word to the person for whom it was always part of this message. If somewhere in the course of what you just heard, the section about theta and gamma brainwaves, about the 7-minute practice, about Dr. Rivers and the research that connects spiritual sensitivity to measurable neurological patterns, if that section did not feel like an interruption to the message, but like a continuation of it, if something in you recognized the connection between the frequency you carry as a chosen one and the frequency that the tool is designed to restore, then that recognition is worth paying attention to. The genius wave is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. It is not going anywhere. It is simply there for the moment when you are ready to say yes to the next layer of the preparation that is already in progress in your life. If today is not that moment, that is completely fine. Come back to this message. Come back to the community. Come back to the practice. The door is open and it stays open. Now the last thing. And this is not information. This is simply a closing, a breath, at the end of a long conversation between two people who have been honest with each other across the length of this message. You came here today carrying something. You may leave still carrying some of it. That is all right. The releasing does not always happen in a single sitting. But something has shifted even if you cannot fully name it yet. Something in the interior of your life has moved. And the movement, however quiet, is real. Go gently into the rest of this day. Let the ordinary hours be a little less ordinary now that you know what they are building toward. Let the people around you be seen with slightly fresher eyes, knowing that some of them are about to play a part in your new season that neither of you can fully anticipate yet. Let the next closed door be received with slightly less panic, knowing now the difference between being overlooked and being positioned. You are a chosen one in the final hours of a wilderness season that has assembled you for something the world has not yet seen you do. The Kairos moment is not approaching. It has arrived, and you are already inside it. Go. And go knowing that heaven has not looked away from your story for a single moment of the journey that brought you here today.